Our class is 4C, and we've been working with Mr. Ken over the past couple of weeks, and we've been researching on the Sydney Metro website to research and come up with questions to ask and learn about the Sydney Metro.
My name is Sean Caldwell. My current role is the asset manager for Sydney Metro operations. I've worked with Sydney Metro now since 2016, when we first started building Northwest, and we first started putting the first stations together. So nowadays, I look after everything that has been built and trains currently run on, all of our stations, all of our precincts, making sure that those are looked after, and that the people that look after the railway are doing their job properly.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, kids. My name is Tariq Malkan. I'm the Associate Director for Engineering, and what I do is I look after the delivery of our Metro West tunnels, which are going to go from Westmead to the CBD. I've been with Metro for just over a year now in this current role, but before that, I also worked on Northwest from 2012 or 2013 to 2017, where I was sort of looking after the design for the tunnels on Northwest, as well as for the SkyTrain, which is the big bridge section that goes from Bella Vista out to Rouse Hill.
Excellent, thanks very much. All righty, so we've got a handful of questions here. So we might get a person at a time to come and ask the questions, and then we'll get you guys to tell the story for us and let us learn a little bit more about the Sydney Metro.
What was the reason for the idea of platform screen doors rather than the traditional doors on other trains?
I'll take this one. This is one of my favorites. So platform screen doors are fantastic. They create a safe environment for the customers on the platforms. So you cannot fall onto the tracks. You can't have your bags or your children. There's no risk of anything falling off of the platform onto the track. And then also there's a second benefit to the platform screen doors, that with the doors being in fixed locations, when you get to a station, you know exactly where you need to go. So when you come up the lift in our SkyTrain stations, or you go down the escalators in our tunnel stations, you can walk straight to the doors and you know that's where you're going to get on board the train. Sometimes when, with Sydney trains, it's a little bit more difficult. So you get there and it's just a big long platform, and it's not always clear where you've got to stand or where best to wait to get on the train. So that's the main reasons behind that. And there's also a little bit there to prevent people getting onto the railway that might want to. I'm sure we all know that some people like to walk down the side of the track. With our railway, with not having a driver, that's not something we can let happen. There's no driver to tell people that there's somebody there and there's a danger on the track. I can give you a little bit more on that one as well, actually. Yeah. Thinking in my head here. So you may notice, so if you've been on Sydney Metro Northwest, we have two different kinds of doors. So if you go down into a tunnel station, we've got doors that go from floors to the roofs. Those are called platform screen doors, and they're really easy to do in tunnels and enclosed stations, because you're building down and you just need to dig down to the level at the top of the wall and dig down to the level for the platform. When we go to our outside stations, we have doors called platform edge barriers. Now they are 1.8 meters tall, and that's a good height to prevent people from climbing over them. So they've both got slightly different names, and they get called, the names are used kind of, you can use either name for either of them, but they're both different things.
Interesting.
How challenging was it to find and decide on the materials needed to build the Sydney Metro?
I'm going to let Tori answer the first half of this one here.
Yep. So thanks, Sean. So our Sydney Metro tunnels and our stations need to last a long time. That's the most important thing. So when we design our stations and our tunnels, they're designed to last 120 years, which is a very long time. So, if you think 120 years from now takes us to what year?
That's even older than Miss Close.
well into the next century. So we need to choose really strong materials that can last that long. And usually one of the key materials to do that is concrete. So all of our tunnel segments are made using concrete, which are then reinforced with steel in some instances, and in some instances, they're just plain concrete. Some of our other stations, which are underground cavern stations, and there's a picture behind me, you can see of a big cavern. So some of our stations on City and Southwest are cavern stations, and those are constructed using concrete as well. As our platforms and our slabs where the trains sit on, the tracks where the tracks sit on, that's all made out of concrete as well. And that makes sure that it lasts a long time and is strong and is safe for all of our customers who are going to use Metro. Sean, do you?
Yeah, so I think the interesting one here is how far and wide Sydney Metro had to go to get all of the right equipment. So on our railway, we've got things that have been built all over the world. You might hear a lot in the news that our trains were built in India, and that's one part of it. But we also have some equipment that was built in Poland. We have equipment that was built in Germany. We have equipment that was built in the UK. We have a lot of material that came from China, all over the world. There was something in the region of, tens of different countries were involved in helping build Sydney Metro, and it was a truly worldwide endeavour. We use suppliers and specialists and experts from many, many different countries, and Sydney Metro became a very, very diverse place throughout the building and the operation of the contract.
Thanks, guys. One of the big questions that the students had earlier on was so much material we've dug out for things like tunneling and things like that. Was any of that material then reused in the build?
So some of the material does get reused for landscaping and reforming earthworks. On Sydney Metro West, on one of our contracts, we're actually using a lot of the material that comes out of the tunnels to build the new train stabling facility at Clyde. So this is where all the trains get parked in the night when they've done their job during the day. And we're going to use, I can't remember the figure, I think it might be almost a million cubic meters of fill in that area.
So Tariq, I remember the topsoil was very valuable on Northwest. Did we do anything special with the topsoil specifically?
Yeah, we reused a lot of the topsoil for a lot of the landscaping around the viaducts and I think around our stations as well.
But the question just popped up about why was the topsoil so valuable?
Well, it's good for planting and making flower beds and things like that to make the station precincts look beautiful. So.
And there's a lot of places in Australia, I understand, that they don't have fantastic topsoil. So whether it be because of the harsh sun or, in some places it can be the rain, it becomes very compact and very difficult to plant and very difficult for plants to grow effectively. So when you do have good topsoil, it becomes very valuable for a lot of people in a lot of places because it can help them grow where they wouldn't normally be able to.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Why was the tunnel so deep underground, and can you explain how this was achieved?
Yeah, so when we tunnel underground, we need to make sure we avoid all of the buildings on top and foundations from buildings on the top. So we go deep. We also go deep into Sydney sandstone. Now, Sydney's base, a lot of Sydney is built on sandstone, which is a type of rock, and it's a very good rock for tunneling in. So we dig a big box, and then we lower our tunnel boring machines into there. As you can see a picture of one of the tunnel boring machines behind me there, and then the machines start tunneling through there, and making sure that we can keep a safe distance away from the buildings on the surface.
Barry, can you remember how deep the deepest part of the network was?
I think it was about 75 meters, which is
75 meters below. Yeah, it's around Castle Hill, isn't it?
It is, yep. So 75 meters is about a 25-story building.
So I know that we've got a lot of students here who like to mine and Minecraft, and I know what it's like when you are digging around sandstone, you often find sand. So was sand problematic in and around where you were building as well?
Sometimes it can be, but the sand, because it's compressed over millions of years, it's quite solid. But there are some parts where it's not sand and there are softer materials that sit above the sandstone in Sydney. So when we were going under the harbour for the City and Southwest job, that went through softer ground, and we needed a special type of TBM that could go through soft ground, which can manage those soft soils.
Nice stuff. Yeah, we've got a lot of positive nods here. Everybody's, oh yeah, okay, great. Okay. Yusuf?
Why did you need 288 platforms?
Oh, that's the platform. Why so many platform screen doors and so many platforms? Yeah.
Okay, so platform screen doors and platforms. So we need so many platform screen doors because each of our carriages has 3 doors on each side. So anytime you go to a station, we've got 6 carriages per train, which means that each train has 18 different access points. Now, when you then consider that there's 2 platforms, that means that you've got 36 doors for every single station, effectively, with only 2 platforms. Now, we've got 2 stations which have 3 platforms. We have 1 station with 3 platforms, and that is Tallawong Station. Although 1 platform isn't quite there yet, it's a virtual platform. You'll see if you go to Tallawong Station that there's only currently platform 2 and 3. That's because platform 1 is effectively a virtual platform that exists only in our software. But yeah, I'm hoping that answers the question a little bit. So we have 3 doors per train, 3 doors per carriage, and 6 carriages per train. So 18 doors per platform. That's it adds up to being a very big number very quickly when you add in just a few stations.
There you go.
We'll be honest, the 288 platforms got us a little bit when we were talking about it beforehand.
Yeah, because we picked out the students picked out that figure, and they're like, well, that's a big number. And it was like, no, that's how many screen doors there were. But even still, we thought, gee, that's an awful lot of doors for the number of stations. So it was nice bit of research for the students.
Yeah, and look, there's also, if you manage to get to one of the stations, what you'll find is there's even more space. So in theory, what might happen if the trains get busy enough, we have the ability to make our trains an extra 2 carriages longer. So they'll become 8 carriage trains. And that means that we'll go from just the 18 doors per platform to 24 doors per platform. So you'll see at the far end of each platform, there's enough space for another carriage worth of doors, both ends.
And then it becomes an even bigger number, guys.
It becomes an even bigger number. It becomes
that's right.
Bigger.
Can you tell us more about how you discovered the idea of having the Sydney Metro and how you got started on the project?
Okay, so the idea of Sydney Metro came about, must have been 10 or 12 years ago now. So originally, when the government was looking to build the Northwest Rail Link, it was a standard double-deck train from Chatswood and Epping, then on to Rouse Hill. And then when we were doing the design, they figured out they could get more people through the system using a metro train, because metro trains can travel very close together. And Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they can get as close as 2 minutes between each train. And so the decision was then made to do a metro train, and it also meant that the train would be driverless, which was a cool new technology. And it's a new technology that's been in use all over the world, in metros all over the world. So in the likes of Singapore and Hong Kong. So we wanted the best metro in the world in Sydney, so we decided to go for a metro system, and that's how it came about. Sean, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I was going to ask you first, and then I'll talk a little bit there, Tariq. So how did you find out about Metro? How did you join Metro?
So I found out, I joined Metro when the company I was working for won the contract to deliver the tunnels and the viaducts for Metro Northwest. But even before that, I was involved in and looking at the Northwest Rail Link design, which was the predecessor to Metro. So I've been sort of aware of the project since about 2011, 2012.
Deliver a tunnel sounds kind of funny because you turn up and take something away. Delivering it is actually coming to remove something. Yeah.
It's a great one, and yeah, it's true. The tunneling is a very interesting. Tariq, you know, if you have questions about tunnels, tunnels are a very fascinating thing to build. You know, I come from I build railway systems, so signaling systems and radio systems and like telephone and communication systems. I'm fascinated by the tunneling myself as well, because it does on the outside. It seems a lot like. Sorry, I'm going away from the question a little bit here, but it seems a lot like tunneling is about removing material and creating a home. There's so much more to it than that, because there is a building portion of it as well. There's a delivery portion, and that's in the tunnel segments and in these caverns that you can see behind Tariq in his image. These are the complex parts that actually make the tunnel something that stays there for a very long time. You can dig a hole, but that hole won't last very long unless you make sure that the right things have been built behind it and on top of it to prevent it from stopping being a hole and just being a collapsed hole. Now I'll come back to the question for a second there and talk about how I found out about Sydney Metro. So prior to working in Sydney Metro in kind of 2010, 2011 time, I was working in Western Australia for a company called Rio Tinto, who you might know of. They're a mining company. Now, we did a large project for Rio Tinto to give them driverless trains for their freight. So they have big iron ore trains at 1.8 kilometers long, and they asked us to make them driverless. So that was Australia's very first driverless train system, and I was involved in that, and I used to be on board the train and trying to get the train to drive itself and understand the problems and understand where that wasn't working and then fix that. So while I was up there, we heard that Sydney Metro were going to bring in a driverless system themselves. And I was very fortunate and very lucky that I joined a company not long after that got some work for Sydney Metro. And I was naturally kind of brought in to join the project because I'd worked on driverless trains and with driverless systems before. Yeah, and then the rest was history. That was 2016, and yeah, like I say, I joined just as we were about to start building the driverless technology and the standard technology we have on other railways that allow driverless trains to work.
Yeah, for your context, guys, the students have been learning a lot about robotics and automation and robotic technology, and the idea of both the expanse of the tunnel and the automation of everything has been a really good point of interest for our students here, because it's a big thing for their futures as well.
Yep, and if it helps picture the way I've always imagined it, having worked with driverless technology particularly, is we're a very large conveyor belt, very large, very complicated conveyor belt. But in effect, the trains are just working very similarly. They run around in a circle, backwards and forwards. The complex bits are the bits that we build on to make sure it's safe for the customers and safe for the people that are using those trains and running those trains on a day-to-day basis. But the simple principles it's very, very simple to make a train drive itself. It's very, very complicated to make the train drive itself very safely.
There you go. All right. So one of our other questions while we're on the topic was around building the tunnel underground. So we sort of started on that. Can we continue with that one? And that way we won't go full circle and back to something we'd already started discussing.
You have to do-
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how we build the tunnel, I think was the question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So so how we build a tunnel is using a TBM, which is a tunnel boring machine, which is that picture behind me, which is it's like a big steel tube with massive cutters and teeth on the front. You can probably see on my image there, and what the two men doing there, they're replacing some of those teeth, because as the head rotates, it cuts into the rock and gets a bit blunt. So as you go through the ground, it needs to be replaced. And as this TBM goes through the ground, it also constructs precast segments of concrete, which are pieces of concrete. There are 6 pieces, which then form a big ring of about 6 meters in diameter, which then forms the circle of the tunnel. Now, tunnels are circular because circles are a very strong shape, and when you're underground, the ground is trying to crush the circle and the strong concrete segments, make sure that the train is safely in the tunnel, and then the train can run safely in the tunnel. And so the way we launch our TBMs is we dig a big box in the ground. Some of the boxes we dig are about 25-30 meters deep, about 200 meters long. We drop the TBM into the box, and then we launch the TBM. Brett, can I share my screen? I know it's not going to get captured in the audio, but it
Absolutely,
might be good
go for
kids.
it. Yeah.
Let me just share my screen, and this is an extract from the ebook, which I think is available on the Sydney Metro website as well. So kids, you can see this is the big box we dig, and there are 2 marks there on the wall where the tunnels are going to go through. So this is on Sydney Metro Northwest. This is at Bella Vista. So these were the first metro tunnels that we built. So this is another view of another station box, and there's the TBM ready to go at Bella Vista. So like Sean said, these TBMs get built all over the world, and this came through from China. You can see it's come on a massive ship, and there are these huge cranes that are lifting it onto the back of a truck to bring it through to Bella Vista. And then the builders who built the tunnel put the TBMs together, and you can see it there, and it's just started to excavate the face there. And you can see these gray bits here. These are the concrete segments that line the tunnel. And so the tunnel then continues on its way to the next station. And you can see there's a picture inside there of the tunnel with these huge hydraulic rams, which help push the TBM through the ground while the cutter head's turning. So these are the precast segments that are used to line the tunnels. These are made in a special factory called a precast yard, where the concrete's poured into these steel molds here. So when the concrete then goes hard, these cranes lift up the segments and stack them in the yard, ready to go into the TBM. And when the TBM is ready to receive them, they go on to an MSV, which is this multi-service vehicle like that. They stack the segments on there, and they actually then drive into the tunnel to help the TBM put the segments into place. And then finally, once the TBM segment's in place, that's what the inside of the tunnel looks like, ready to put tracks and trains and all the other equipment that you need to run a train.
And there was a fantastic number there, Tariq, that I think that the kids would love to hear about. 98,000 segments.
That's right. So that was on Metro Northwest. There were 98,184 concrete segments, which helped build about 15 kilometers, I think, of twin tunnels on Metro Northwest.
Thank you very much, guys. And that actually leads into our next question.
How did you arrange the transport of 200 tons and 70,000 segments of concrete?
And you're saying now it's actually 98,000, not 70,000. Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, that's right. So that on Metro Northwest, it was about 98,000 segments. On the current project I'm on, which is the central tunneling package on Metro West, that's between Sydney Olympic Park and the Bays, is about 70,000 segments. So those segments are, like I said, made in the big factory at the precast yard, and then they're loaded onto the MSV, which was the little truck that I showed earlier. Bring it back up again, which is this little truck here. So they put six. I think they can take up to 6 segments, the trucks, and then these trucks drive into the tunnel, and then the TBM has massive arms that picks up each segment and slots them into place to make up the ring.
Wow. So it's moved in little chunks. Yeah. We're thinking maybe all on a big ship or something like that. But yeah, that's it.
That doesn't stop the need to get rid of material as well. When we were building Northwest, there were over 1 million truck movements throughout the lifetime of the project. So that's to take rubbish away, bring other materials, not just concrete, to site. There were entire teams of people dedicated to planning those trucks on a daily basis and making sure that they didn't overlap and that they didn't have a big, you didn't have 5 or 6 trucks turn up at the same time. And we spread those out. And then on top of that, making sure that when you're going through a residential area, like we did at, say, Cherrybrook Station, that you didn't disturb the neighbors too early in the morning and too late at night. So there was a whole big team of people that just looked after how do we get trucks in and out without creating too much hassle. And it's been even more complicated in the city for the City and Southwest project, where you've then got to compete with all the traffic. So they've got trucks that go in and out of there every day, and they're even more strictly planned to try and mitigate and minimize the amount of delay and the amount of time that those truck drivers spend waiting to get into a train station or into the station boxes that Tariq showed you in that last piece there.
Were you able to work around the clock, or did it have to be within certain hours?
So within certain hours for truck movement, certainly. When you're tunneling, because you're so far underground, you can work 24 hours a day. But any works and stations or any work above the ground, that was always typically limited to what we call normal construction hours in New South Wales, which is, I believe, 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. And then on the weekends, you're allowed to work from 8. On a Saturday, you're allowed to work from 8 a.m. till midday or 1 p.m.
So the big robotic machines can work all night, all day, non-stop.
Yep.
But when they're moving trucks and things around, they can only work in certain times. So they have to really be organized to get everything, especially all the stuff that the big digging machines are getting out. They've got to remove it all. So it's not just getting things in, it's getting things out as well.
When we build these big projects, one of the most important things is to make sure that we don't upset our neighbours, and we let, because people have to live next to a railway. We build a railway so that people nearby can get to the work or get to school or go to where they need to go. So very big, and probably one of the more important things for us is making sure that we don't upset those people. So we don't want to run our machines 24 hours a day. We don't want to have trucks running 24 hours a day, because if our neighbours can't sleep, they're not going to be happy enough to use the railway when it opens up if we keep them awake for a couple of years beforehand. So that's a very important thing for Sydney Metro, is making sure that we do our best to make sure our neighbours are happy as well.
How did you program the metro trains to function by themselves?
Okay, so this one's on me. Now I said it before, very simple to start with, but it becomes complex to make it very safe. So what we do is we start off by programming effectively the trains the train thinks that it's bigger than it is. Is the simplest way to put it. So our trains are roughly 120 meters long, maybe a bit shorter, maybe a bit longer. But our train will thinks in its computer brain It thinks it's, let's say, 150 meters long. So there's a section on the front and a section on the back that it thinks is longer. Now it uses that, and it speaks to a central, uses a system similar to GPS, and it speaks to a central system that tells the train where it is, and that train reports where it is, and also finds out where other trains are on the network. So then all we have to do is make that train know not to move into the same place as another train. So they can get very close together, but the train that's traveling around the back will never, ever try to drive into the same place as the other train. Now, in terms of telling the train where to go, that's the bit that's a little bit more complicated. So it's very similar to what you do on Sydney trains. So I'm sure you've all seen signals before. So on the railway, you've got the signal lights with the red, the yellow, and the green. We have, with the computer, you don't need to give it a light to tell it that, but we give it very similar information to tell it that this is where you need to stop. And then the computer works out, where does it need to brake? Where does it need to accelerate? Where does it need to just keep going at the same maximum line speed? And it does all that calculations in its head, as well as making sure that it's not going to get anywhere close to a train in front of it.
Okay, yeah, because we code some little, we've got codable and programmable robots that the students work with. So they've got some knowledge of proximity sensors and all that kind of thing that they work with in that that capacity. And we might even work to program a Sydney Metro rail network with some of those robots. We might do that later after hearing about this. Might be quite cool. Yeah, with a little model of it.
That's it. The difficult part is making it safe for people and making it so that, you know, we spend a lot of time, so that you've got to make sure that the best bit to do is we do our best to make sure that a train will not fail in 1 million operations. So 1 million operations, you should never see a single time that the train does the wrong thing. So you've got to program your computers to be very, very safe. And computers can make mistakes. Computers are not always 100% correct. So making sure that minimizing and reducing that to 1 in 1 million times that mistake, there's a mistake, is the challenging part. But yeah, I would definitely just try and do it with your robots. It's good fun. It's a good project to do.
What was the most challenging part when constructing the Sydney Metro?
There's lots of challenging parts.
I think that's where the questions originally come from. There were so many things that sounded challenging. The students went, well, hang on, what was that one thing that everybody went, oh, goodness, this is going to be something we all have to get together and work on?
Yeah, I think I suppose Sydney Metro, it's like a big Lego set. Like, you know, every part has to fit on top of every other part. So it's very important that we first plan our work and plan the project and figure out how all those parts are going to fit. So in the area that I work in, the tunnels, we figure out, you know, how big the tunnel needs to be, what are the things that need to go into the tunnel, how's the tunnel going to then interact with all the other things that go in it, like the tracks, like the overhead wiring system that provides power to it, the lights and the communication systems that need to fit into the tunnel. So there's a lot of planning that goes into that, and we then work with all of our different teams. There are lots of teams, like, you know, I work in the tunneling team, Sean works in the systems team. There's lots of other teams at Metro who sit down and figure out how all this is going to work together. And then we contract it out. We send it out to the people out in the market who can build these things. And we say, right, we want you to build this bit. And then someone else will come and build another bit. And I suppose the most challenging part of all that is to integrate the whole thing, to bring the whole thing together, so that when someone puts the switch on, the trains run without a problem, and all those parts work together to make sure the trains run. And I don't know, maybe Sean can probably add a bit more on that sort of integration piece.
And that's it. I think for me, it's a very similar answer. So around the scale of the project, that's the real challenge. You know, Tariq uses the Lego, like building a Lego set. I always like to use the idea. It's like building a house. Building a house with thousands and thousands of people all doing different bits and pieces all throughout of it. Now, the biggest challenge is making sure that every day, if you've got so many people and so many different bits of work, there's always something that goes a bit slower than you would hope it, than you wanted it to, or that you planned it would do. And then it's making sure that everybody else that's involved in it knows when to turn up and knows when to go and do their job. So if you're building a house, you can't come in and have the people putting up the gyprock come in before they've built the frame of the house. So if there's a delay in building the frame of the house, you've got to tell the gyprocker that he's going to have to wait for a few weeks. Now, in our project, if one important part like the tunnels are delayed by weeks, you may have to call up 5 or 10 different companies and tell them that they need to start 2 or 3 weeks later. And somebody needs to know every single impact and tell every single person how long and when they need to come to site and start, so that you don't end up with lots of people just sat around waiting. So that was the biggest challenge for me, and just understanding that every single thing that got delayed for whatever reason may have this big impact and this big flowing impact around the project, where you need to speak to everybody and tell them that you're not going to be able to start on the day, or you're going to have to wait for a few days before you start building it. That was the biggest challenge for me, is understanding that integration and getting everybody to work together, so that when we get to the very last day and it had to be finished, we got there and everything was finished at the right time, and there wasn't a group of people that were sat there waiting to still get on site and build their piece.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge was actually organising people. And I think that the idea of this, what I'm imagining is, imagine that all your brothers and sisters and all your cousins and all your relatives were all at your house all at once, and everybody was building the same Lego set and following the same instructions. Someone would have to organise all of those people and let them know which bits to do. And that would be, imagine being the person who had to organise everyone. Yeah, the kids are like, whoa,
Yeah.
goodness.
So really is a wow. And you might think the difficult part is building a station, or is building the trains, or making the trains work. But we're very lucky that the people that we used for Sydney Metro, or the people we use for Sydney Metro, are very, very qualified people. We've got very skilled tradesmen all the way. I always talk that Sydney Metro wasn't built by a single smart person. It was built by all the way from the people cleaning the offices that the designers worked in, all the way through to the person that looked at everything, the big picture of everything, and made sure it all worked together as well. We had electricians, we had tradesmen, we had engineers, we had people that made decisions, we had designers, we had all ranges, but everybody knew their job and everybody was qualified to do what they were doing. And that makes it very easy to build a railway. If you've got a lot of people that know what they're doing, that bit falls together. It's just making sure they do it at the right time that then becomes difficult.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, the students were talking when we were doing our research and thinking, oh, possibly it was sourcing enough materials and that kind of thing. But considering that the biggest challenge has been just simply organising such a big project.
What has it been like working on the project in the Sydney Metro?
So saying, what's it been like for you?
Oh, for me, it's been great fun, because it's a fun group of people to work with, and it comes back to enjoying work and enjoying the people you're with, and you do spend so much time with the people at work. It's almost like it's your second family. So, and also, it's been great because I've worked on Northwest, and I've been involved in the delivery of the tunnels and the viaducts, and to actually see trains running on it has been fantastic. So it's a great sense of achievement. It's such a fantastic project. I mean, it's probably one of the biggest metro systems that are under construction at the moment. So it is a sort of once in a century opportunity to work on a project like this. So that's been a real privilege for me.
And I want to add to that, for me, it's incredible. I originally came to Sydney Metro. My very first contract with the project was for 3 months. It's now just over 7 years later, and I'm still here. And through that time, I always joke that my first day, the first day I came to the project, our rail depot, or the Sydney Metro train facility that you may have seen on the website, was merely just dirt in a few concrete bases for those buildings that are there just now. And since then, I've seen it come from just being holes in the ground all the way through to being a fully functional railway. But then it's the people. So I've been very fortunate through my time to be involved with a lot of programs like this and coming and speak to schools, but also speaking to the people in the local area and introducing them to the stations and getting them familiar with that. And I always have a story of we did a session with a group of people that had difficulties, so they were differently abled. And there was a young girl who was blind, and she was extremely excited because this created the opportunity for her to travel very easily on her own. And that was a big thing for me. It changed how she saw travel. So our station was built with people that are differently able in mind, so she could walk into the station on her own, she could get down to the platform on her own, and she was 100% safe on the platform, and then to be able to get on the train, get off the train and get out of the station at where she needed to be. And that's probably the biggest thing for me, is that, you know, you see it as a train station, but for some people that is their access to the rest of the world. And those we talked about platform screen doors, and we have lifts that are very easy to use. We have gate lines that are very easy to use. And our stations have all these little systems that help people differently able to get around. That's the bit that I'm most proud of, and that's probably the bit that I always think back to, is we're making a real difference for people in the area. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, I can imagine catching. Well, I think I can imagine, but maybe I can't. Imagine trying to catch a train if you're blind and you can't see. Having things in place to be able to do that would be amazing, and it's actually set up for you. That's a big deal.
And every train station in New South Wales is designed so that if you are differently abled, it should be as easy as possible. But Sydney Metro's got an extra step over and above, because we don't have, you can't fall onto the track, so you don't need to worry about making sure that you know where the right, you know, how far back to stand. You don't need to, if you're in a wheelchair, you don't need to go and get a ramp to get on the train. It should be near enough level, so you should be able to just roll straight onto the train. These are little details that maybe we don't normally pick up ourselves, but makes a very big difference for somebody that's never been able to do that, or has always had to go and ask for that extra help.
Well, we know what that's like at school. We've got some students at our school who are in chairs, and they have to have staff members to help them around certain areas of the school. And if there's places in Sydney now, especially the Sydney Metro, that's set up in a way that they don't need an extra helper, that's amazing. That makes a big difference for people.
And for their confidence.
Absolutely, for their confidence in their life.
And it sets an example for everybody in future, because everybody that builds a railway in future is going to have to try and do just as well. So every time we build a new station in New South Wales, we're going to have to try and make sure that everybody gets the exact same experience, and that experience should be the same or better. So every Sydney Metro station will be exactly the same.
Yeah.
That way. That for me is when we ask about what it's like working on the project. For me, it's the impact it has for others. And that's the most obvious, but within the Northwest particularly, there's a lot of people I'm not going to say their lives have been changed, but a lot of people who have been given the ability to change how they travel, and for them that's only a good thing. They've got more options. They don't have to jump in a car, and they don't have to sit on a busy bus to get to the city. They can jump on a train, and that train's very quick and gets them to the right places pretty quickly. Sorry.
What are the plans for the future of Sydney Metro?
So I feel like I've been talking a lot. Do you want to? Can you do a little bit on this one, Tariq, and then I'll speak to
absolutely. So look, there are projects. So we've currently got 3 projects under construction on Sydney Metro. So we've got Northwest. Oh, sorry. So Northwest is already opened. So we've got Sydney Metro West, which I work on, which is due to open in 2030. We've got the Sydney Metro Western Sydney Airport, which is due to open in 2026. And then we've got the City and Southwest section, which is currently under construction, which will go through to Sydenham and then Bankstown in 2024. So that's the immediate future for Metro for the next sort of 8 years, getting those lines built and opened. And then after that, I'm sure there'll be, as Sydney grows, there'll probably be plans to expand those expand the systems even further. But but our immediate focus is to get the 3 lines that we've got currently under construction open. Sean, I don't know whether you want to add a bit more to the post 2030.
So yeah, I think we can talk to the vision. So I think that's the important thing here is Sydney Metro is part of a bigger whole. So we've got Sydney Metro, we've got city trains, we've got buses, we've got light rail, we have intercity trains, we've got all these different modes of transport. Sydney Metro is a small part of that bigger transport whole. So what we do just now and where we've been built just now is to try and address some of the busiest areas of Sydney, increase the number of trains, because one of the reasons Sydney Metro exists is we can get more people through a section in the same amount of time. So that's our near future. So as we go through the city, we go into the southwest, and then when we go to the west, is so we can move more people more quickly, so that we can try and achieve the 30-minute city goal, where you can get to one of the 3 major hubs in Sydney within 30 minutes, no matter where you are in Sydney. What that means is over time, as Sydney gets bigger, Sydney Metro is going to grow. So I talk about the ring and the cross. So if you look at the way that Sydney Metro, if we look at the map of Sydney Metro just now, we're starting to create a bit of a ring around Sydney. So those people that live outside and in the suburbs have a train service nearby. There's not a Sydney train service, and they can jump on a train nearby, and it'll bring them around the outskirts and bring them into the city. And then when we go, go down that way, and then with the west that Tariq works on, we're now going through the middle again. So eventually that looks like that might go across, and there might be a bit of up and down and a bit of a ring around. And that seems to be where Sydney Metro is going, so that you can get to a major city hub within 30 minutes, no matter where you are. And that sounds sounds like I'm selling that to you.
Cool. That's impressive.
But that's the government vision, and that's the state's vision, and we're dedicated to making that happen. That's all of our designs kind of work on the idea of 30 minutes to get to the city is ideal. That's as much as you want to travel to work. Nobody wants to spend 3 hours to get into work and back. And we all live in Sydney, so we know that.
So I don't know. One of the interesting bits of maths is 2030 that they're talking about. That's the year that you will all be in year 12. You will all be finishing high school, and you will be on your way to deciding what you do after school, where you go to work, where you go to university, all of those things. So that year is actually a very significant year for all of you. It really is. Yeah.
And knowing that they can travel.
And knowing you can travel and you can decide where you go, that's massive. It really is.
And if you're thinking, if you're aware now of what the transport in Sydney looks like today, and then you look at, and it's not just Sydney Metro, but Sydney Trains and others as well. If you look at in 2030, what is going to be available for you to travel around the city, is probably the biggest change in transport for probably the last 50 to 100 years, really, in terms of options and availability of getting to around Sydney quickly.
Well, Mr. Kent and I are excited because we don't even live in this community, and we travel about an hour to get to work every day. So
yeah,
sounds good.
Yeah, hour and 15 for me to get home yesterday. So to get anywhere you like in 30 minutes is massive.
Yeah, I know.
Oh yeah, there won't be anywhere you like. It's 30 minutes to the nearest city.
We know what you mean. Yeah, that's it.
So I can't give you something. I wish I could offer you that, but we are restricted. But yeah, no, it's a very big thing. And again, it's the eventually, because you guys will eventually get the Western project, and that will make a massive difference. The ability to, even in the Northwest, the ability to. You don't have to go exactly where you want to go. If you want to go to Castle Towers, for instance, and go shopping at Castle Towers, you no longer need to drive to Castle Hill. And you've got 12 other places that you can go and park and jump on a metro and get straight there. And you'll find that when the Westmead to the city section builds, is you don't need to drive to exactly where you need to go. You can jump on a metro, and we will provide the easy links to the most important things. Our stations are being built close to what we want to be close to. It's not just built in a random place, it will be built next to the shopping centre, it will be close to the schools, it will be close to the big bits in different places. So you can park, you can leave your car if you have to drive somewhere 15 kilometres away, jump on the train and still get to where you want to go very, very quickly. And more often than not, quicker than you would have been if you drove your car all the way there.
Thanks for listening to
Thank
us.
you very much. Thank you for the very good questions. By the way, me and Tariq had fun reading these this morning and going through them with each other before we joined in. They're very good questions in here.
Yeah, we've been concentrating on asking questions that are ungoogleable, that you can't just find out on a website, and you only get by talking to someone and having a conversation. So thank you so much for being part of it. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk to these kids, because it makes a huge difference.
No, thank you. And anytime we really enjoy it. This is a big part of helping everybody in the work. To help everybody understand what City Metro Vision is, and sometimes it's not obvious. Very easy to read a website, but like to say, those ungoogleable bits are the bits, the human connection and speaking to people and asking questions, and seeing that we want, myself and Tariq are both very passionate about City Metro. A lot of our people are very passionate about what we do. It makes a very big difference to the city.
Alrighty, once again, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
It's another version of me. It's another version of me. I'm in the future. I'm in the future, miss. It's a future.